early
So-
at 9, so.
I can't get it out,
Oh.
so we're gonna put
Oh,
this
yeah,
on.
that's-
This computer isn't mine, so
Yeah,
it won't
yeah.
let me delete
Oh,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I was,
Sorry.
we'll just, yeah.
Oh, my.
And the most important thing is, we
Is
won't
Dennis joining or no? Right.
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Okay. So I have him listed. Oh, there he is. Is he coming at interview? You want me to do it, Jen, or you good?
Oh,
What?
she's gonna introduce us.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you wanna go ahead, I don't
No,
need
no,
to
no,
be
no,
on
no,
the
no,
camera at
I
all,
want you
so.
to. Wait,
Dennis coming
Is
just
Dennis coming
before
up?
we start, weren't we expecting
Who's
someone
here?
else? We're expecting
Roll call,
Fox?
roll
Is
call.
someone from Fox 29 here?
Fox 29 is supposed to be here. They're not
Yeah,
here yet.
I don't see anyone from Fox.
Want to give them a
29.
couple minutes?
Let's give them
Okay.
like 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was them, WFMC and Eagle that I knew about. but-
Do you have a phone number?
No,
Or no?
but they didn't call me either. and
I
then
know,
That was an email that they sent.
WEU's joining virtually and WITF's doing virtual. I got those emails. But let me make sure Fox sent anything else.
Don't matter, you can.
I thought Dennis and Harold were coming up.
No, I
No?
thought Dennis was. No, they're shy. They're camera shy. You can go on the other side.
All right, then I'll, yeah.
But you just stay here and I'll go over here.
Yeah, you,
How's that?
since you guys are doing the
I'll be his
the
right
pictures,
hand,
you,
right
yeah,
hand.
there you go. I do like that.
Thank you,
I do
too,
like
by
that
the way.
suit color.
It's nice, yeah. Very nice.
What?
I
The
just-
suit.
Yeah,
I actually, I got one at Men's Warehouse the other day.
I got,
weeks ago.
that's
I
where I
got
got
a
this.
sport coat, just a tad bit lighter blue
Yeah.
than that.
Reminds me of my first Holy
What?
Communion.
Well, maybe I should put a suit for men's, advertise for Men's Warehouse,
Yeah.
maybe they could give me a discount.
Where does that man get his suits?
Yeah, yeah. Next time I'll arrange, I'll try to use that as a selling point when I'm over there, when we have to talk price. Yeah.
Oh, I put them as emails, so I shot something off, but they don't answer. I think we just go without them.
Okay.
They knew the time.
Yeah, let's,
Yeah.
see if you can contact us.
Yeah.
Well, they sent us an email saying they were gonna be here.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
They can easily change their mind based on anything that happened today.
yeah.
Because that was yesterday, they said. I don't think they would expect us to wait from us early either.
Yeah, okay. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
It's getting close to lunch o'clock anyway.
All right. You good? All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stephanie Weaver, and I'm the Public Relations Officer for the County of Berks. I'm here with District Attorney John Adams, First Assistant District Attorney Dennis Scahan, Chief County Detective Michael Gumbar, and Acting Berks County Coroner John Hollenbach to hold a press conference about the investigation into the officer-involved shooting in Muhlenberg Township on March 15th, 2021. This press conference is being streamed live to the District Attorney's Facebook page to allow for virtual participation. We ask any media representatives with questions to submit them by email to the contact information you were provided yesterday. We will only be accepting questions related to this investigation. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to District Attorney Adams.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. As Steph Weaver indicated, I am joined here by my First Assistant District Attorney, Dennis Scahan, who's in the room, Chief County Detective Michael Gumbar to my right, and to my left, Acting County Coroner John Hollenbach. Today's press conference is in regard to the officer-involved shooting, which took place on March 15th, 2021, in Muhlenberg Township. On that date, at approximately 2:15 p.m., the Berks County Department of Emergency Services received a 911 call from a female reporting that her uncle was being very threatening, and the to come to the address of 706 Wagon Wheel Lane. The female confirmed with the operator that she needed an officer as soon as possible, and then the call disconnected. Short time later, this female placed a second call to 911 where she provided additional details to the 911 operator. Muhlenberg Township police officers were then dispatched to the location. Upon arrival, the uniformed police officers met with the complainant. The complainant identified herself as the niece of Stephen Hughes, who was her uncle. The complainant informed the officers that Mr. Hughes is a 62-year-old who suffers from alcoholism. He has some mental health issues and some physical health problems. She told officers that her uncle and grandmother lived together, but that her grandmother was not currently inside the home. She did tell the officers that her uncle had a history of violence towards her grandmother. She stated that her uncle refuses professional help and is armed with a knife in the second-floor bedroom. The knife is depicted on the screen as we speak. Additionally, prior to calling 911, the niece spoke with a mental health professional. She explained the situation regarding her uncle's current condition. She reported that the day prior, she was with her uncle inside the home, that he was intoxicated and held a knife to her face, then threatened to kill her, but he did not harm her. The mental health professional advised her to contact the police because in his professional opinion, he felt that Hughes was a possible threat to himself and others. The Muhlenberg police officers arrived. They proceeded to the second-floor bedroom and observed that the bedroom door was closed. Officer 1 identified himself as a police officer and was able to have a conversation with Mr. Hughes through the closed door. Officer 1 told Mr. Hughes that he wanted to talk to him and get him some help. He continued to maintain communication with Hughes, and at one point during the conversation, Hughes told Officer 1 that he didn't want to talk to him and that he had a knife. In an effort to continue to try to de-escalate the situation, Officer 1 again tried to converse with Hughes, but Hughes went silent. The initial contact with the officers lasted approximately 5 minutes when the officers were attempting to speak with Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes then goes silent, and after approximately 2 minutes of silence, both officers, Officer 1 and 2, who were up on the second floor of this residence, became concerned that Hughes may be attempting to hurt himself. Both officers decided to open the bedroom door and check on Mr. Hughes' condition. Officer 1 had his department-issued handgun at a low ready position. Officer 2 had his taser in a ready position. They slowly opened the door, and I want to go back a second. The door was initially locked. They were able to locate a key to the door. They slowly opened the door and observed Hughes standing approximately 12 feet from them, and he was holding the knife in his hand. Hughes stated at this point, "Fuck you," and began to advance towards the officers. Of course, Mr. Hughes had the knife in his hand when he was advancing towards the officers. The officers gave verbal commands several times for Hughes to drop the knife. Hughes did not comply and continued to advance towards the officers. When Hughes came within approximately 4 feet of the officers, Officer 2 deployed his taser, aiming at the center mass of Hughes' body. The taser was deployed. However, both officers realized that the taser had no effect on Hughes because he continued to advance towards the officers with the knife in his hand. Subsequently, to stop Hughes' continued advancement towards the officers with the knife and for their own protection, Officer 1 fired one shot from his handgun aimed at center mass of Hughes, causing him to fall to the floor with a single gunshot wound to the chest. Immediately thereafter, within probably 30 seconds or so, officers at the scene and ambulance personnel administered first aid and CPR to Hughes. He was then transported to the Reading Hospital Tower Health by the Muhlenberg area ambulance. At 3:14 p.m. that same day, Stephen Hughes was pronounced deceased by Dr. Vincente Cortez, who's a trauma surgeon at Tower Health. On March 16th, an autopsy was performed by forensic pathologist Dr. Neil Hoffman. Dr. Hoffman preliminarily ruled that the cause of death was a gunshot wound of the chest. On March 23rd, the toxicology report from Penn State Health St. Joe's indicated that Stephen Hughes had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.268. For your reference, the BAC, that BAC is over 3 times the legal limit to operate a motor vehicle in Pennsylvania. It is a very high blood alcohol content. On April 8th, 2021, the final autopsy report from Dr. Hoffman confirmed the cause of death of Stephen Hughes was a gunshot wound of the chest. He also ruled, he added contributory causes of acute and chronic alcoholism and bipolar I disorder as additional causes of the death of Stephen Hughes. On April 14th, 2021, Berks County Acting Coroner John Hollenbach ruled that the manner of death to Stephen Hughes was a homicide. This was a lengthy and thorough investigation by my department. As you all know, we always have an independent agency investigating officer-involved shootings in this county. This independent agency was, of course, the Berks County District Attorney's Detective Unit. As a result of the investigation, we have made some conclusions, and I will give them to you momentarily. We have determined that the actions of the Muhlenberg Township Police on March 15th, 2021 were a reasonable act of self-defense and defense of others, as dictated, we use the word dictated, in Pennsylvania law. The officers believed that they and the other officers were in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm due to Hughes' actions of refusing to comply with all police commands and by advancing towards the officers with a knife. It is also reasonable to believe that Hughes had the intent and means to inflict death or serious bodily injury to the officers, and the officers' use of deadly force under these circumstances was reasonable and therefore privileged under Pennsylvania law. The officer involved was justified in using deadly force against Stephen Hughes to ensure the safety of himself and the other officer. The officer will not be charged with any criminal offense in connection with this incident. Neither officer will be charged with any criminal offense in connection with this incident. While it is very unfortunate that a life was lost, the action taken by the officer involved was for protecting himself and his fellow officer. Therefore, this was a justified use of force. I want to also point out that the United States Supreme Court has spoken about these type of incidents in a case, Graham versus Connor. And they held that the reasonableness of the force used requires careful attention to the facts and circumstances of the particular incident, including the severity of the crime issue, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of the officers or others, and whether he is actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest by flight. Further, the Supreme Court stated, the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene rather than the 20/20 vision of hindsight. The calculus of reasonableness must embody allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force that is necessary in a particular situation. In conclusion, we believe that the use of force here, again, was justified under Pennsylvania law. With that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Can you speak to the fact that you mentioned that the Supreme Court will only take into consideration that there's a rapidly evolving situation and the amount of force to be used as a split-second decision. In this case, you had already said that the officers decided they needed to go in because they thought the suspect or the subject was, Mr. Hughes was silent. And they assumed that the possibility he was going to harm himself, so they went in. Was there a better way maybe to handle that? Because some advocates are saying that, activists are saying, this was a situation where maybe a social worker could have.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Steve. They opened the door because they were concerned that Mr. Hughes was going to harm himself. And this is one of those particular situations where if they would have stood back and did nothing, and Mr. Hughes would have committed suicide while they were right outside the door, they would have been criticized and chastised for not acting. In this case, I believe they did the right thing. They opened the door hoping to make certain that Mr. Hughes was not hurting himself. But then Mr. Hughes made the choice in his inebriated state to charge towards the officers. This is one of those situations. Damned if you do, and damned if you don't. And I think that, quite frankly, we have seen too often, I call it second guessing or Monday morning quarterbacking the decisions that law enforcement must make in a split second. The decisions that I believe were made here were appropriate and they were within the confines of the law and of our what we look for when we are analyzing legally. Did the police violate Pennsylvania law? They did not. I think the other thing that we also have to address with your question, and mental health workers are not trained to enter into situations where someone is armed and dangerous. They're not equipped, number one, nor will they respond to an incident where they're going to be put in harm's way. That's not, unfortunately, what mental health workers are trained to do. So when we have the lethal combination of someone with mental health issues and with a firearm or a deadly weapon, it is a lethal combination. And unfortunately, things such as what happened here can take place. It's very difficult, and the police are put into these very precarious situations day in and day out. And our evaluation of this incident is that the Muhlenberg Police followed the law and abided by Pennsylvania law in this incident.
Just a follow-up question that we can all sympathize, everybody here probably, about these officers who were, they obviously have a right to defend themselves, and they were put in a very tight spot, difficult situation. One of the officers fired a taser, and it didn't work. Can you speak to the fact that, this was not, their immediate reaction was not to use deadly force, it was to use non-lethal?
That is correct. They had initially attempted to use non-deadly force by utilizing the taser. In this situation, the taser did not work. And when I use the term work, I'm not an expert on tasers, but we believe through our investigation that we have determined that the taser probe hit a metal part of Mr. Hughes's sweatshirt, and as a result, they were unable. It didn't deploy as it should have deployed, and as a result, he was continued. It did not stop him. He continued to go towards the officers, brandishing the knife. This is not the first case, nor will it be the last situation where officers tried to de-escalate and use non-lethal force, and tasers sometimes are not effective. That's a fact of life. There are also some contributing factors sometimes to a taser not being effective. I don't know that it took place here, but sometimes when one is under the influence of controlled substances, maybe even alcohol, which this individual was, that might have some effect in the taser not being as effective as it should be also.
Just real quick, so obviously you mentioned that mental health professionals wouldn't respond to a scene like that, and we know that officers have to deal with that situation. So can you just speak to what level of mental health training that your average officer that would encounter that, or is it different levels have different...
I do know that we have done a lot of training in Berks County, training first responders with mental health. As to the specifics of that, I'm not aware of that, but we have done a lot of training. And we continue to do training in this area because we know that it's an area that we see day in and day out. More police are responding more often than not to situations where an individual is suffering from some mental health difficulties. And as a result, the Berks County Police Chiefs Association, my office, our mental health office here in the county has done a lot of training so that officers are prepared. And many, we also have a number, and I'm not certain of the number, but we have trainings where they become certified. I think it's called CIT training. I'm not particular if that's appropriate, but we do offer a lot of training in that area, and we will continue to offer a lot of training in that area as officers in the streets of Berks County and throughout the nation are running into incidents more and more involving someone who is suffering from mental health difficulties. And when you combine the mental health difficulties and the use of a weapon or the possession of a weapon. It's usually not a good ending. Anything else? Thank you. We